how we relate to each other is a demonstration of the gospel. But what if you don't like somebody on your team? How important is it that you and those on your team aren't just producing quality work, but are enjoying one another's company? In this episode of Leadership for Today, Don and David Phelan explore the importance of doing more than getting along with your teammates. They will discuss the ins and outs of team dynamics and what to do when you don't like somebody on your team.
Hey, hon, it's good to be with you again today. I wanted to talk with you about a situation that we encounter quite a bit when we're working with leadership teams. And it's a situation where we see that, for lack of a better way of saying it, members of the team don't like one another. And sometimes we'll hear from the senior leader on the team that, my team, we get things accomplished, but at the end of the day, we really don't like one another all that much. And is that really all that important if we're getting the work done? And so let's start there and just discuss that question. Is it important that members of a team like one another?
Well, yes. If it's a ministry team, it is very important that they like one another, that they choose to get along with one another. That is how we relate to one another is part of our ministry. And so, yes, it is very important that we get along with one another.
Yeah, compare that with, you've had a lot of experience working in business. I've had a lot of experience working in business. And in my team experience in business, we were all about delivering the product, getting the software product delivered. And that was the goal. And if there was infighting and disruption within the team, as long as the product got out, we were good. How is that different in a ministry team?
Well, in a ministry team, we are commanded to love one another. Whether we're in business as a believer, if we're in the business environment, or a ministry environment, John 13:34 and 35, Jesus said, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. As I have loved you, so you must also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one for another." So even in a business environment, we as a believer need to get along because it is a testimony of Christ, but all the more so in a ministry environment, because when we don't get along in a ministry environment, we are harming the whole body of Christ and the testimony of Christ to an outside world.
Yeah, it's how we relate to one another is a demonstration of the gospel. And
Right.
So too often, I think teams are thinking about the work that has to be accomplished, the work product, the deliverables, and they lose sight of the fact that in a ministry environment, part of the work product, the first and foremost deliverable that we have is how we labor together.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons at IBL we work together as a team, so that when we're going to a church, when we're working with a Christian couple, they can see how we work together, not just you and I as husband and wife, but you and Dave Dietz, or you and Joel Tetro, or you and Derek Jarvis, whoever it is, whoever the team is made up of. They can see how we interact, and we are an example of, hopefully, by God's grace, we're an example of how we should interact with one another.
Yeah, that's right. We've often said if we could bottle our team meetings and show that to our clients, the impact that would have, because our team meetings are fun, they're dynamic, they are great from the standpoint of exploring different perspectives because we're all different on our
Right.
team. And that's kind of a segue to another point here, is that when we're dealing with a team where there's some dislikes within the team, where there's some relational struggle within the team, how do you respond to that? So let's say we have a leader who the primary leader of the team, and he said, I've got some people that aren't getting along well. They really don't like one another as they work together. What sort of things would you offer to them to consider?
Well, they kind of need to figure out why they don't like one another, and what does that mean? Are there personality differences on the team, which we're all different personalities? Is there someone or some people on the team that are just hard to understand or hard to get along with? Some people take more effort to work with. Maybe they're limited in their communication skills, but sometimes people are just tolerating one another. And that's where we begin to get into a problem. In 1 Corinthians 12:21 and part of 24, it talks about the eye cannot say to the hand, I don't need you, or the head to the feet, I don't need you. Because God put our body together. And when we're in ministry together, we're all part of the body of Christ, and we need to be working together with the different personalities, with the complications in communication, and there's always complications in communication. It's the bearing with one another in love that we need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, that diversity that's described in chapter 12 of 1 Corinthians is an integral part of the body of Christ, designed by God to have that diversity. So along with that diversity comes the challenges of communication, the challenges of developing unity, of loving one another through those differences, the different perspectives, the different personalities. But that's what we're about. So sometimes I think, just get over it. That's the nature of the beast. That's the nature of the body of Christ, that we're supposed to work through these things. And it's the primary work that we have to do. The passage you referenced in John chapter 13, how we relate, that we're loving one another, it's the gospel, it's evangelism. That's how the lost world sees Christ in us as we relate together. So we need to do that work before we do any other work, the work of relating well together. What about when it gets to that point? You use the phrase where we're barely tolerating one another. What do you do in a situation like that?
Well, for myself, I usually look at myself. What is it that I am tolerating? Why am I in an attitude of just tolerating something? And that's what I ask other people to do as well. If somebody was coming to me saying, I just can't tolerate this other person, why? What is in my heart that is causing me not to love? Because when we say we can't tolerate someone, it means I'm not loving them. And what is within me that is keeping me from loving that other person? And it's usually my thoughts about that other person. I'm not thinking well of them. I'm not considering them as better than myself, where it talks about in Philippians 2:3-4. And I'm just not in a posture of humility. I clearly think that I'm better than they are.
Yeah. And when we reach that point of my head's ready to explode, and the other person may have done just a very little insignificant thing, but my head is ready to explode, this isn't about that little thing that person did. It's
Right.
about what's going on in my head. And I would say to a primary leader who sees that kind of dynamic in the team, you've got to address it, because that's a deep-seated systemic problem that you really need to give focused attention to.
Yeah, not only is the team going to see it, but if you're working on a church staff, the entire church is going to see it. The whole flock, and especially the visitors eventually will see it. And again, so we go back to harming the cause of Christ, harming the testimony of who Christ called us to be.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, thanks, Dawn, for taking time to talk about this important issue of liking one another in our relationships within our team. So important how we labor together as a team. Thanks very much for watching. Take care.
I hope you found this discussion helpful. If anything in this conversation hit home and you want to talk to someone, please visit iblministry.org and contact us. IBL is regularly putting out resources like this one. Please like us on Facebook to be notified when new resources post. I'm your host, Tim Hall, and I hope to see you next time on Leadership for Today.